much for those of you who supported my alternate channel. I'd like to start doing more live streams. I'm going to have to do some volume tests. Apparently the last live stream, the volume was a little bit spotty, and so I'm going to try to figure out a way to do more live streams, but that's coming up on the channel. Thank you very much, though, for those of you who supported my alternate channel. It really means a lot, and it's going to help me out a lot. Now, getting to Vigano, EVTN, Eternal Vigano Television Network. Vigano was participating in an antivirus conference organized by Patrick Coffin, and this web hosting program that was being utilized was shut down. It shut down Patrick Coffin's antivirus conference. Vigano Schneider and many other doctors, antivirus people were speaking at this conference. Now, I'm not a big fan of Patrick Coffin. Most of you probably know that. If you read his Twitter, then you will see why. But I think it's really important that we get this kind of information out there. It's really important that we have alternate ideas being presented and as an alternative to the media, the narrative that's being presented by the media. And so a conference like this being shut down, it just shows how little power we have as individuals and how much power the corrupt virus religion has over everything. Getting into the topics, the New Mexico governor waived mass attendance limits in the state of New Mexico. The governor is Michelle Lujan Grisham, who's a Democrat, and she allowed churches to reopen at 100% capacity in New Mexico. In the Archdiocese of Santa Fe, Archvirus Bishop John Wester ordered parishes to continue following the state's recommendations that were previously enforced as restrictions. So he's actually restricting the attendance at these parishes, but even though the Democrat governor has waived all restrictions, it sounds kind of sketchy to me. This bishop is a true believer in the virus religion. We call him an archvirus bishop. He may actually be a cardinal in the virus religion just because of his strong promotion of the virus. And in his archdiocese, it was also announced that they were forced to sell properties because of abuse payouts. The Archdiocese, which filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy in 2018, they plan to sell more than 700 properties. A lot of the properties are vacant lots, no bigger than a couple of acres, so it's really not super significant. It's just that they were holding on to this property and waiting for a time to sell them off whenever they really needed the money, and now they need it. And there were nearly 400 claims of abuse, some of which allegedly occurred decades ago, that had been filed. And so the virus archbishop, he's not getting any money from his parishioners, and so he's got to find a way to raise money, sell off some vacant properties, and that's the way to go. Now, I do expect eventually that a lot of bishops will be forced to sell off churches. I think with the way the Novus Ordo is going, the virus religion, the bishops are telling people, they were telling people to stay home, and they're trying to beg them to come back, and people will say, no, I can just live stream, until they reinstate the obligation, which doesn't even mean anything at this point. The obligation will mean nothing to these people because they've stayed home for the past year. It's been at least a year now, and they've gotten into their routines, and maybe they didn't believe in the Catholic faith anyway to begin with, and so why would they go back? But even if they do believe in the Catholic faith, why would they follow or want to give money to these corrupt bishops that shut them out of public masses, and they're very hesitant to preach the Catholic faith? I don't know. I don't know the answer to these questions, but it's going to be interesting to see what happens. And I think that the Latin Mass communities are really blossoming, and they're the ones that are bringing in the money. And so money talks. We'll see how many bishops turn trad, if any of them, because the ones that don't try to suppress the Latin Mass realize, hey, there's a real opportunity here to grow the Catholic faith and to make money off of the parishioners. And it depends on their level of corruption. So if the bishops are not focused on just money, just the money aspect, they're going to see that these people like the Catholic faith, and they might even join, say, a pontifical high mass, who knows. But this is what's going on in the Archdiocese of New Mexico. I hope none of you attend Mass in the Archdiocese of New Mexico, or Santa Fe, New Mexico. And if you do, I'm sorry. Hopefully, you can wait it out for a few years until you get another archbishop who might be equally as corrupt. Father Z wrote another article on the SSPX, and Father Z he's definitely an outsider, but he's been pretty friendly towards the SSPX, and I think he kind of has a sympathy for them because he's kind of in no man's land. He just kind of goes wherever the bishop, to a diocese where the bishop will permit him. But he's had some good insight into the SSPX. I've referenced some of his articles before. Here's one of the quotes from his article. He said, "It could be said that the SSPX and the FSSP are in competition. The fact is that the present landscape of the church is extremely complicated and large. Each group is trying to preserve the church's tradition and to form solid priests, in that they are on the same page. A major difference between the FSSP and SSPX is the FSSP is formally recognized by the church and the SSPX is not. It doesn't mean that the SSPX has no status whatsoever. It means that their status is not as formalized and clear as that of the FSSP and other traditional groups." So here he's talking about sort of the so-called competition between the FSSP and the SSPX, which it doesn't seem like there's a lot of competition between the two. It seems like a lot of their churches are in different cities. They don't overlap very much in terms of the territory, the geographic regions where they decide to locate their parishes. Now, in terms of the SSPX, I did see something that Church Militant may be releasing more hit pieces on the SSPX, and it's the SSPX has become sort of this taboo. Is it something you don't talk about? And I think we need to talk about it, because any kind of situation like this, if you ignore it or if you say, "Oh, they're schismatics," well, they're not schismatics. So anyone who says they're schismatics is completely wrong. And so we need to kind of look further into the situation. Even Father Z says it's complicated. So what I would say here is just continue to read up on the SSPX. They could be a safety zone for us, and so I think it's helpful for us to network if we have a local SSPX parish, because we don't want to go there in the situation where the churches are all shut down and then we're all clamoring to get into the SSPX parish. No, I mean that's not really fair to the parish, because a lot of those parishioners have been going to the SSPX. They're the ones who should receive first priority to attend the Mass, because they're the parishioners there, and they're basically like, all right, we're going here because we thought something like this could happen, and so we pre-planned. So I think just helpful for us to keep in mind that the SSPX exists. If we don't attend the SSPX, just respect them for what they do, because their situation may come in handy. Their canonical status may come in handy at some point in the future. Recently, Cardinal Cupich got into sort of a back and forth with Archbishop Aquila of Denver. So Aquila wrote an article for American Magazine on Eucharistic coherence. Now, American Magazine, it's basically like a parody news site where they kind of report on stuff. Their opinion pieces are very heretical and very wacko-virus religion. And so I don't know why a bishop would be interested in writing for American Magazine unless he completely supported the anti-church, but there was an editor's note for Archbishop Aquila's article that said, "This article is part of the conversation with American media, offering diverse perspectives on important and contested issues in the life of the Church. Read another view on the reception of the Eucharist here." And it links to the article titled, "Priests Should Think Twice Before Denying Communion to Catholics in LMNOP Unions." So they're trying to play the middle ground, like, oh, okay, we're gonna have perspectives here from a heretic and a Catholic, and then we're gonna present ourselves as moderating the debate. No, that's not how it works. You don't take perspectives from heretics. You tell them that's heresy, and you need to be Catholic. Anyway, in his article, Aquila says, "While it is likely that too many, receive the Eucharist in a state that is objectively separated from God, there is an added obligation on public officials who openly and persistently live in a state of grave sin. Their example leads others into sin and compounds the risk of condemnation that may come their way when they stand before God. If If the Church truly loves them, as she does, then it is more appropriate to call them back to an intimate relationship with each person in the Trinity through repentance before receiving the body and blood of Jesus in a way that endangers their eternal salvation. So Cupich asked Aquila for public clarification, and Aquila responded with a number of citations of canon law and St. Thomas Aquinas. And so this was really in regards to denying politicians that are pro-abortion communion. But the problem here is that Aquila doesn't really name names, or doesn't even come out and say that all politicians that support pro-abortion, that call themselves Catholic, should be denied communion. This is basically a fundamental stance of the Catholic faith. And I think bishops should take it farther and excommunicate any politician who is Catholic but claims to be pro-abortion. But this also leads to another point. The USCCB meeting is coming up in June, and Cardinal Cupich is really making a lot of enemies here. The opinion of the bishops apparently is that a lot of them don't like Cupich. Archbishop Gomez, the president of the USCCB, released a statement after Biden's election saying that he was concerned about Biden's pro-abortion stance, and Cardinal Cupich released a counter statement to that. Now, Cardinal Cupich is being supported by Rome, he's being supported by the Vatican and Pope Francis, and so he has a significant amount of power among the U.S. bishops, even though he has no top position in the USCCB. However, he's wearing it as welcome very strongly in the United States, and I think his best hope at this point is to be shipped off of the Vatican permanently, open up the Archbishop's seat in Chicago, and maybe McElroy could go there, as has been discussed. That would be a complete nightmare, because I think McElroy is actually worse than Cupich, in my opinion. Maybe not, I don't know. Let me know in the comments what you think. But it leads to the question, what's this USCCB meeting going to be like? Are the bishops going to issue a statement that says pro-abortion politicians should be denied communion? It's very unlikely. I think it was around 2004 where Cardinal Ratzinger sent a statement to all the bishops' conferences of the world, including the USCCB, on behalf of Pope John Paul II, saying that politicians should not present themselves for communion if they support abortion. And this was, at the time, the leadership was Archbishop Wilton Gregory and Cardinal Theodore McCarrick. And they paraphrased the letter, glossing over the more strong statement, or the more strong parts of the letter, and made it seem like it was an option. The Vatican was saying they didn't have to deny communion to these pro-abortion politicians, when in reality they did. And then we get a pope who is very hands-off right now, and he actually kind of supports Biden, it appears. And so this is something that maybe the Vatican will intervene last minute at the USCCB meeting, if the USCCB even decides to talk about this at all, which who knows if they will. But it's going to be an interesting situation coming up here in just a month, a little over a month. And as always, I track the USCCB meeting. I post some video clips. This one will be on Zoom again. And I'm going to have full coverage of the USCCB meeting on this channel. That's something I like to make a priority for this channel, so you see what's going on in the United States. Father Cipolla writes an open letter to Bishop Barron. This occurred actually a few months ago. I think it was in March. But I did want to mention this, and I also want, before I mention that, I want to say about Bishop Barron's sermon that he gave, I don't know if it was a week or two ago, where, did you notice Father Mark Goring released a video against Bishop Barron, kind of criticizing Bishop Barron's reasonable hope that all are saved? Dr. Ralph Martin of Sacred Heart Seminary also released a video against Bishop Barron in that regard. Now, I don't know why more bishops, priests, lay people don't just come out against Barron and say, hey, this is wrong. And because it seems like they always gloss over and say, Bishop Barron, you're this great figure, and I respect you, and I agree with most of the things you say, but I don't really like this. And that's what they all say. And why don't you just come out and say it straight up? Say, hey, Bishop Barron, I don't care that you're a public figure. This is completely contradictory to the Catholic faith. There's these numerous Bible quotes, and I think Ralph Martin even quoted Vatican II against Bishop Barron. That's kind of a really strong point if I've ever seen one. But Father Cipolla, he has a number of quotes here that I'm going to read. There's just a few paragraphs. It's a pretty interesting letter. At first, he goes on to say, Bishop Barron, I respect you and all this stuff. But then he goes on to make some strong points. I'll just read a few of them, and you can read the full letter if you want to read all the quotes. He says, yes, evangelization is a central issue, but as Pope Benedict XVI knew, you cannot evangelize a world with a Novus Ordo Mass whose roots and rationale are locked in the 60s. That is why he issued the motu proprio that uncancelled the traditional Roman Mass. It is indeed ironic that you, who understand so well the role of beauty in the Christian faith, you who understand that one of the names of God is beauty, refuse to acknowledge that the very heart of the Church's liturgical life has been emptied out by the disastrous reforms after the Council that had little to do with Sacrosanctum Concilium and everything to do with those with itching ears and a puffed up sense of their own intelligence, and affected with the mid-century hatred of the past combined with a grossly sentimental understanding of the Christian faith. They had never heard that Cardinal Newman called sentimentality the acid of religion, nearly destroyed the organic whole of the liturgy of the Catholic Church. Bishop Barron, I think you ought to write less and talk less and get out more and meet people. And by meeting people, I do not mean leading conferences and giving important talks. I mean listening to not only your fans, but to all sorts and conditions of men and women. And I would hope that you would venture even to sit in choir in a parish in your diocese that offers a traditional Roman Mass, see what you see and hear what you hear, but you must put aside your mid-century prejudices that you mistake for a new manifestation of truth. So this is pretty hard-hitting. It's a very long letter, and I hope Bishop Barron reads it, but I would expect not. He's got a narrative to push, and he's locked into that narrative. That's how Word on Fire makes their money. And so I would imagine he's just going to continue to push the failing belief that Vatican II was poorly implemented. It really wasn't, and there's been numerous debates on that. If Vatican II was poorly implemented, all the bishops that were at Vatican II had an opportunity to implement it correctly. Why didn't they implement it correctly? Well, that's one of the arguments there, and that's all I have to say on that. Father Freddy Leonardo Herrera Fuentes in Bogota, Colombia, told parishioners that from this moment in our parish, it's only going to be possible to receive Holy Communion on the tongue and kneeling down after he had a mystical experience. Now, John Henry Weston of LifeSite News talks about this in a LifeSite link that you can find in the description, and I would encourage you to watch the video. But I think communion, kneeling on the tongue, it should be the only practice of the Church. If you are not receiving communion on the tongue, I would strongly encourage you to start receiving communion on the tongue. I know for me, I didn't receive communion on the tongue until just a few years ago. It was kind of weird for me because I've been locked into the Novus Ordo world my whole life. Just started just a few years ago, and I haven't gone back, and it's something that I'd recommend to everyone. Now, for the Byzantines, obviously they have their different practices, and this doesn't apply, but just try to make sure that you do the most reverent way of receiving communion, and that is in the Roman Rite, kneeling and on the tongue. And so this priest, he had a revelation during Mass, and he realized that, and so this is what's going on. And hopefully more priests are like this. Hopefully more priests come to the realization, yeah, we're going to distribute communion on the tongue, especially after the virus religion came through and completely destroyed a lot of the faith of a lot of people. So we'll pray that most priests have the faith to realize that this is an important step in our church. Communion on the tongue is very important. Can't be understated. President Joe Biden has a new bishop. Monsignor William Koenig of the Diocese of Rockville Center in Long Island, New York, was named the bishop of the Diocese of Wilmington, Delaware. Now, Biden's previous bishop in Wilmington had said that he wouldn't deny Biden communion, and this one, I don't know what this one's going to do. Will he deny Biden communion? It would be a very significant step, but I would imagine, based on who's appointing the bishops, that's Cupich has a very strong voice, so does Wilton Gregory, in recommending bishops to the Vatican and Pope Francis. And, they have the term Francis Bishop for a reason. I would imagine that the bishop will make some kind of wishy-washy statement. We need to accompany people, discernment, all this stuff, all are welcome, all that nonsense. So I would expect there's not going to be any changes there, but who knows, maybe there will be. This was a notable news item as it is an important topic in the United States. Cardinal Ouellet announced a major Vatican conference on priesthood slated for 2022. The synopsis is called Towards a Fundamental Theology of the Priesthood. It seeks to encourage an understanding of the ministerial priesthood that is rooted in the priesthood of all believers conferred at baptism, getting away from the idea of ordained ministry as belonging to the ecclesiastical power. The Cardinal said this in a news conference. It says, priesthood of the people, that's I don't like that at all. Because what this means is that, like, I'm a priest, you're a priest, and so we can distribute communion. We could, I don't know, perform some of the sacraments. I mean, we can obviously perform baptism in an emergency situation, but it diminishes the priesthood. It increases the significance of lay ministers, either appointed or unappointed. So, like the minor orders, no one cared about the minor orders. At least none of the Vatican II bishops cared about the minor orders until Pope Francis said, "Oh, women can be named lectors and acolytes," and now they care about it all of a sudden. But I think that the priesthood of the people. See, it's conferred on all people at baptism. This is just completely crazy theology, and nothing good is going to come from this conference. It's going to be another step towards a female priesthood, in my opinion. I don't know. This is going to be a step towards female priesthood, married priests, married LMNOP priests, and maybe even a priest who identifies as a woman. I don't know. This is another step towards that. Theologian Massimo Fagioli of Villanova University recently made a very interesting tweet. Bishop Strickland was speaking out against the virus religion, and Fagioli said, "We really urgently need something like vos estis for these kinds of situations." Now, remember, vos estis is investigation of a bishop for abuse or cover-up. And Bishop Strickland was just talking against the virus religion. And so does this theologian, alleged theologian. Is he saying that someone should frame Bishop Strickland and accuse him, commit some false allegations against Bishop Strickland? I think what he's saying is that there should be some kind of excommunication, like schism, heresy trial, which I agree, there should be a trial for heresy or schism or apostasy or whatever. There should be a canonical trial for that for a lot of people. There should be one for bishops who promote the LMNOP agenda, who support the ordination of women. There should be a canonical trial for politicians who call themselves Catholic but decide to support abortion. And so I do agree that there should be some canonical trial, but I wonder why he chose these words, vos estis, for these kinds of situations. Now, himself, Fagioli, he is a dissident, a Catholic dissident, and so he stands for everything that the United Nations promotes and nothing that the Catholic faith, the Catholic Church promotes. He even wrote a book about Joe Biden's faith. So that kind of tells you what he believes. It's not Catholicism. It's the Church of Pachamama, and you're seeing it if you go to Villanova University and take a theology course. Bishop Stika is facing a likely vos estis investigation. Now, the Pillar reported on this, and I'm not a fan of the Pillar. J.D. Flynn promotes the virus religion, but they do some good investigative work. I mean, it's worth checking out from time to time, and this is one of the stories here. Now, Bishop Stika, if you'll remember, he banned communion on the tongue in his diocese of Knoxville, Tennessee, and he got into an argument with Taylor Marshall. He's kind of a crazy man on Twitter. He's just unhinged, loose cannon, whatever you want to say about him. But he called Taylor Marshall a nut, which I had a funny meme. I thought it was funny. I don't know if you did. But in the article it says that Stika impeded or restricted investigations into the accusations of misconduct by a seminarian who was living in Stika's home. The seminarian was dismissed from the seminary because of several allegations of harassment or misconduct. After he was dismissed from the seminarian moved into the episcopal residence shared by Stika and retired Cardinal Justin Regali. The seminarian was appointed to a staff position as the bishop's assistant and given an office at the diocesan chancery. The day after the seminarian was dismissed from his seminary, Stika told priests in an email that he had entered a 2-year period of discernment. He will be assisting me at the chancery as well as helping the cardinal with daily activities. So, I mean, I can't help but laugh at this. Like, the guy, he's getting allegations of harassment, and they found it. Like, it's not just like, someone just hates him, so he just says, okay, I'm going to, make up some false allegation. It seems like these allegations were credible. And so Stick is basically like, all right, well, you can come live with me. What? Like, what's going on here? What? So will Stika be removed under Vos Estis investigation? I don't know, but I don't think a lot of people would be sad to see him go. I think, he's definitely worn out his welcome. The people in his diocese don't really seem to like him, just because, one of the big things is communion on the tongue. He's banned communion on the tongue in his diocese, but he kind of runs like a tyrant. He basically says, I'm going to do whatever I want. And it's not that he's not traditional. Like, he's supported some Catholic ideas. I remember Stika standing up behind Archbishop Chaput, formerly of Philadelphia, whenever Chaput criticized James Martin, and Stika said, I stand with Chaput. So he's not like this complete heretic, but he does a lot of weird things, says a lot of strange things, and it's almost like he says things for shock value on Twitter. But it seems like Stika may be losing his bishop's position if these allegations are indeed true, as it appears they could be. And with that, I want to close and say thank you so much for watching. I have a lot of ideas, new ideas for this channel. We're going to do a few different things, maybe. We'll see about the live streams. So thanks for sticking with this channel. I'm trying to get you the news. I'm trying to get you some important news and talk about stuff that may be buried under the radar. And with this channel, and I encourage you to follow Canon 212. I get a lot of my news from Canon 212, so you'll see some of the stories that I'm going to be talking about. That's always a good website, and I just like to do these summaries, get you this information, let you decide the information for yourselves, read the links in the description, because I have opinions, but I'm just a random lay guy talking to a video camera, and it just so happens that people are interested in this kind of stuff. And so you have opinions too. You can feel free to let your voice be heard in the comments below. Let your voice be heard everywhere, because we are the laity and we will not be silent.